Geordie Journo's back here at the Newcastle United training ground, where we've been speaking to Eddie Howe ahead of the trip to Bournemouth on Saturday. Myself and Jordan have only been back in England just over 24 hours. 4 a.m. Return to Tyneside, I guess, after the trip to Bournemouth. Good trip, bad result. Newcastle still domestically 9 games unbeaten, hoping to extend that to 10 on Eddie Howe's return to the Vitality Stadium this weekend. Jordan, the press conference itself, plenty to talk about. Obvious news this week about ownership-related loans and bans on that. Injuries, of course, always a big talking point. But you and me both asked Eddie Howe in relation to Bruno Guimaraes and his suspension this weekend and how Newcastle deal with that. So what did Eddie Howe tell you?
Yeah, as you mentioned there, out for this game. On the back of that Arsenal game, could have actually been longer ban. There was a Premier League panel act came out, the findings of that revealed that Bruno was lucky to stay on the field for that Jorginho incident, but picked up a yellow card late on the game, so it is suspended for this Bournemouth game. And yeah, who did Newcastle turn to for a number 6? Obviously it probably will be Sean Longstaff, because he is the only player that is currently fit and available to play that position. Eddie Howe was asked this question a couple of months ago about Sandro Tonali, about who can play number 6, and he name dropped Sandro Tonali as a potential option. Now obviously Newcastle don't have him, they don't have Bruno this weekend, so it all falls on Sean Longstaff to perform that role. How do you replace a player of Bruno's quality? The simple answer from Eddie Howe is you can't, but as they've had to find out in recent months, they've got to get by. They've got a lot of injuries, a lot of injuries, 2 suspensions now, including Tonali. So they're just gonna have to get by. But a big blow to not have him available this weekend. But sort of speaking generally, if you're gonna pick a game on paper for Bruno to miss, then this is probably the one. Hopefully he enjoys a weekend off, because he's earned it. But then of course he's back playing next week for Brazil as well. So starting 11, Sean Longstaff, I'd imagine, goes back to the question in January, do Newcastle need a person in that area, in that number 6 role? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, if Bruno is to pick up an injury or gets a sustained absence, then it just shows how lightly on that position, as he on multiple positions as well. But yeah, to cut a long answer short, no Bruno this weekend.
Yeah, and it's tough. And I followed that up with, I guess, the obvious replacement in the starting 11, not in the same position as such, but I asked Eddie Howe about Joe Willick. He's probably poised to make his first Premier League start of the season after impressing at Manchester United. It was decent against Dortmund in a difficult night for Newcastle on the whole. And I just asked Eddie Howe how Joe Willick's doing and about potentially making his first start of the season. Eddie Howe's been really impressed with him. He said, for a player being out so long with an injury, he was out over 5 months, I think it was, with a hamstring initially, then an Achilles injury. The numbers he's producing, sort of running stats and the load he's able to put on himself in matches, in training, stuff like that, has been really impressive for how long he's been out. So it's almost like a new player, and Joe Willick is right back almost to his best. So of any player coming back into the side, starting a game, okay, in a very different role to Bruno, he'll probably be on the left side of the midfield 3, even potentially left wing, depending on how Eddie Howe names his side and sets his side up. But Joe Willick would be a big boost for Newcastle, and has been a big boost in the cup competitions in particular since he's returned from injury. So yeah, Bruno, it's always going to be really difficult. We spoke about him, me and Jordan and Liam, a few weeks ago, sort of off YouTube, if you like, during the international break at length. And Bruno is one of the best midfielders we've ever seen at Newcastle. That's the general consensus of the 3 of us, and replacing him is just something that you can't do as such. You can put other players in, but you do lose a lot when Bruno doesn't play. And I think it was telling last season, the games Bruno did miss, Newcastle struggled to put performances in. And I think, could be wrong, but he missed the trip to Bournemouth last season, didn't he, as well, after the red card against Southampton?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
and it was one of Newcastle's lesser performances of what was a very good season last season.
Yeah, exactly. But I think maybe to try and get a positive out of losing Bruno, he obviously didn't start at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And Newcastle put in an unbelievable performance to win 3-0. So look, you miss a player of Bruno's quality, but that game perhaps showed that they have found a way to play without the Brazilian. Given what you mentioned there, Dom, last season they ultimately couldn't find a win without him. So maybe as time has gone on, they've found a way to win without him. It'll be a big miss, but if they can take the performance they showed at Old Trafford, then I'd hope that I've no problems of getting a result at the Vitality Stadium.
Yeah, and another player they could be without, injury concern after the Dortmund game, Callum Wilson taken off at half-time. Since being called up to the England squad, which is promising, but Eddie Howe basically said it's going to be a late call for Callum Wilson.
The decision will be made before they travel to the South Coast this afternoon as to whether Callum Wilson is available tomorrow. I don't know, given Callum Wilson and tightness and hamstrings. I think he had a tight hamstring a few weeks ago or last month and was out for, I think it was 3 weeks in the end.
Yeah. So be extra careful with Callum Wilson, don't you?
Yeah, you do. So I would be surprised if he started this weekend. I'd probably be surprised if he's included in the squad. I think the last thing Newcastle United want is Callum Wilson going on international duty. But from the player's perspective, he probably wants to go because there's only a short time frame between now and the Euros, and Callum Wilson was left out of the last England squad last month. He's been included this time round, so I think as we've seen with probably a Nick Pope, for example, he dropped out of the England squad because of injury in the summer, hasn't got back in since. So I think Callum Wilson at the back of his mind knows that if he doesn't grasp his opportunities in an England shirt and then press Gareth Southgate and around training, then he could actually find himself out of the squad in the summer. Obviously went to the World Cup, but wants to go to the Euros as well. So it's a really hard one. I think ideally you would just let Callum Wilson sit out the next 2 weeks, but I think there'll be a determination on the player's side to potentially, to certainly push for to get into the squad against the 2 games. I think it's Malta and North Macedonia, so I think they've already qualified for the Euros, obviously. So them 2 games feels like 2-0 games, and you might see a Callum Wilson or Ollie Watkins, who's also in the squad, lead the line and rest Harry Kane, if you like. So it's a great window for him. So from the player side, you probably want to go, but from Newcastle's side, they'll not want him to, and maybe with his injury it just might not be possible for him to go away with England. Yeah,
and that could see Anthony Gordon potentially start again up front for Newcastle. And just quickly on Anthony Gordon, Jordan, he obviously wasn't picked in the England squad, not handed his first call up. Eddie Howe sort of hinted that he would be in the conversation and would be under consideration by Gareth Southgate. And I think the 3 of us, with Liam as well, probably all agreed that Anthony Gordon would be very hard done by not to get an England call up. So just what are your thoughts on that quickly?
Yeah, I think it's shocking that he wasn't included. One of the most informed wingers in the Premier League, being Newcastle's best performer this season, arguably. You see players in that squad. We've been over this before, that Southgate's got his regulars, but you look at players in the attacking positions, and I got asked on Twitter yesterday, why are you upset about Anthony Gordon not being in? Who would you replace? Who would you have left out to put Anthony Gordon in? And the simple answer was Marcus Rashford, because at this stage he is not a player in form. There's been obvious struggles for him at Manchester United this season. Still gets your shoe into the squad. Obviously you've still got your centre midfielders, Jordan Henderson, Calvin Phillips, etc. It just felt like a really good opportunity to call up an Anthony Gordon, because, as I mentioned before, you've got these 2-0 games against Malta and North Macedonia. England have qualified for the Euros, so why not give Anthony Gordon his first experience of a senior squad? Maybe don't have to play him, but just bring him in and around training. Just let him sample the senior experience, because he's done it all with England under 21s. As I say, in the summer, won the Euros and was the player of the tournament as well at the under 21s Euros. So I think to overlook Anthony Gordon isn't right, but also isn't a surprise. I suspect maybe after the Euros in the summer there might be a change of the guard, if you like, where the regulars, like your Hendersons, etc., might slowly be faded out of the England squad, and they look to build another squad at the start of Gareth Southgate's process, where he brought in a lot of players from the under 21s into the senior setup. hopefully we'll see that after the Euros. But yeah, it feels like a missed opportunity for Gordon to play for England. But I'm sure it'll come eventually.
Yeah, he had such a big boost from winning that European under-21s championship with England in the summer and came back almost a new player for Newcastle. So yeah, it probably shows the benefits and the rewards you can reap from confidence boosting in the international break. But I guess Newcastle, with the threadbare squad at the moment, will take having all the players they can in and around the training ground over the next 2 weeks after the Bournemouth game. And Jordan, it is very threadbare. We've got updates on the likes of Matt Targett, who's had surgery, out for 3 months there or thereabouts, Eddie Howe said. Jacob Murphy's also had surgery on his shoulder, I think 9 weeks out. We've got Dan Burns, Sven Botman, Alexander Isak. I guess the most positive news was probably Isak. So up front, a potential boost after the international break.
Yeah, I think Isak's been back on the grass. Isn't going to make this weekend, but it has been left out of the Sweden squad as well. That was confirmed by their manager in midweek, so it gives Isak another 2 weeks to recover from his groin issue. And Eddie Howe said in there that he hopes or expects Isak to be back for that Chelsea game after the international break. So yeah, if Newcastle can get through this one game of maybe without a Callum Wilson and have to put Anthony Gordon up front, then obviously after the international break they have a recognised striker to come back in. So that's really positive news. And I guess another positive really is probably Harvey Barnes.
Yeah. When
Harvey Barnes picked up, was it foot injury, toe injury? Well, it was. Yeah. I think it was in between. If that makes any sense. He was expected to be out till late December, but say Eddie Howe again in the press conference revealed that he isn't actually too far away. So the international break comes back. They come back after the international break, and Eddie Howe said he won't be back too long after that. So. We could actually see Harvey Barnes back in November, which is 4 weeks ahead of schedule.
Yeah, big boost. I mean, obviously take everything Eddie Howe says about injuries with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on, a big sort of talking point in the press conference Eddie Howe faced numerous questions about was the potential ban or the vote for a ban on ownership-related loan deals to sort of multi-club organisations or multi-club ownership models where Newcastle we've spoke about previously in relation to the Saudi Pro League clubs, 4 Saudi Pro League clubs owned by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, or 75% owned. Newcastle obviously as well, 80% owned. So it's a potential grey area, and it's just the timing of it seems a bit interesting, where transfer windows just approaching. The Saudi Pro League is now all of a sudden one of the stronger leagues in world football, really, in terms of the players you have available. And that sort of January break, it opens up potential loan deals, and now all of a sudden, if the vote does pass, Newcastle can't get it done, can't get anything done. So what did you make of what Eddie Howe had to say about those questions, Jordan? Because he didn't give an awful lot away, but he did talk about it and did address it somewhat.
Yeah, he didn't give a lot away, but I think probably the line I took from it, and you can probably take this in 2 different contexts, but he said that Newcastle would sort of fight against it. Well, that means in terms of behind the scenes or just on the pitch, I think you probably have to decide that yourself when you read it. I think, like in the press room, I've got the impression that he's talking about on the field, where look, if people want to try and prevent us or restrict us from doing certain things, and we'll fight on the pitch and obviously do their best to not let these things affect them. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a coincidence, because you look at Newcastle got taken over by PIF 2 years ago now, and there's been a lot of changes in that time to almost restrict Newcastle. I think the first one was about sponsorship deals, where the fair market value, that was the first step, and now I think they're trying to change it in terms of third party related ownership, where if you want to get a sponsorship deal now, then you have to show examples of other companies also wanting to pay the same amount as the deal that you're putting towards the Premier League. So for example, the seller paid £25 million for the front of shirt sponsor. If that deal was now, after if and when this new regulation is passed, Newcastle would have to show that 2 or 3 other companies are also showing that they want to pay £25 million for Newcastle's front of shirt sponsors. But on the pitch, it's the third party related loan deals comes in light of the Ruben Neves story. Now, there was no suggestion to say that Newcastle were definitely targeting Ruben Neves this in January. I think he's been a player that's been admired by Newcastle and Newcastle's recruitment team for a while now. They were linked with him probably in January and in the summer as well, before he went to Al Hilal. So that was a name on the list, and yeah, I thought Dan Ashworth was quite well, last week I think he hinted the fact that something was coming. He got asked, can you trade with Saudi Pro League clubs now, and he said yes currently. And then, you know, a little behold, 7 days later, it sounds like Newcastle will be prevented from signing a Ruben Neves like type. So it just seems there's a lot of regulations being put in place to restrict Newcastle, but in the words of Eddie Howe, they will fight.
Yeah, it's interesting, the Saudi situation, where you've got the likes of Liverpool, Chelsea benefiting significantly from this spending power of the Saudi Pro League, and it seems like Newcastle, because of the obvious links, are held to different standards almost, and they can't, if they do a deal with a Saudi Pro League club, it's probably seen as a bad thing. Yet Liverpool, Chelsea, a number of Premier League clubs have benefited financially from sort of flogging their, I won't say deadwood, but certainly players who getting on they could probably get rid of and managing to make decent money out of it, when in reality, if the Saudi Pro League wasn't there, you're looking at releasing players or getting rid of them for small amounts. And Newcastle had a good asset in Alan St-Maximin, 26-year-old winger, Premier League experience, and £22 million seems a bit low in comparison, whereas you could have sold him for potentially double that, but maybe questions would have been asked. So yeah, it's an interesting situation, and yeah, as Jordan says, it's almost no coincidence that these rules and votes come in relation, almost reactive to Newcastle's situation. But yeah, Eddie Howe said Newcastle live with it, the move on. It's not impacted them massively so far. It may impact them in the years to come, but yeah, they'll deal with it. And what else was there to take from Eddie Howe's press conference, would you say, Jordan? It was quite a short one. We're on a bit of a time crunch today.
Yeah.
New Premier League rules that you probably won't be aware of. They want the press conference embargo moved forward for Newcastle. So all the stories came out 15 minutes early today. So given Eddie Howe's press conference was about half an hour long, it gave us about 2 minutes to turn around a story. So if you notice any typos or interesting lines in whatever me and Jordan have produced for,
how'd you do that anyway?
for Newcastle World or Shields Gazette, hopefully you give us the benefit of the doubt. We've since probably adjusted them and amended any errors, but what did Eddie Howe talk about?
It's probably worth touching on just quickly on Yakuba Minte.
Good pronunciation.
I think, am I right? I always struggle with these players' names, but yeah, obviously signed in the summer from OB, was loaned to Feyenoord, and I think by the sounds of it, Newcastle have a recall clause in January. Whether they activated or not, Howe didn't confirm that. But you look at his starter life in Holland, has done very well. I think he's out with an injury currently, so there needs to be further tests on that to determine how long he's going to be out for. But it sounds like the options there for Newcastle to bring him back if they want to do. Yeah. They might not. I mean, they probably won't, depending.
Nah, I'd be surprised.
Depending if there's more injuries in that area where they're really stretched, then they might have to as a sort of desperation move, if you like. But I suspect if things stay the same, the player will just remain in Holland because he's had such a good loan spell over there so far, and I suspect Newcastle will want that to continue. So they might bring that forward to the January. Obviously, he's going to be back here next summer, so might be an opportunity to look at him then. But yeah, the option is there in January. I think
something Newcastle would assess. I think based on the injury situation, if Harvey Barnes is still struggling or if there's new injuries out wide, then yeah, Minte would be a sort of handy option to have at just 19 as well. Wouldn't take up a place in the Premier League squad. So yeah, would be a sensible move. But obviously Newcastle's priority would be to develop the player on loan and get him regular game time, which they probably couldn't guarantee if they recalled him.
Yeah.
So just briefly, bit of news as well. Marcel Bout.
Yes, I forgot to mention.
The ex-Manchester United chief scout, Eddie Howe, confirmed that he's coming in.
Yeah, he said he called it a welcome addition. Won't necessarily impact first team recruitment. I think it's more for bringing in younger players. But yeah, Bout arrives with a lot of experience, a long association with Dutch legend Louis van Gaal. First worked with him at Bayern Munich, and then worked with him at Manchester United as well. I think he was an opposition scout for Manchester United, and then he was, I think, a global scout or something like that. Yeah. Left Manchester United, was it April last year? Yeah. So he's been out of work for good 80 months. Yeah. But there was reports in the Dutch media after the defeat at Dortmund on Tuesday that Bout was joining. I think he was quoted himself saying that he was joining the club and looking forward to it. Newcastle haven't released a statement yet on it, but as I say, Eddie Howe in the press conference just confirmed that he will be joining the club. So I suppose it just shows the stuff that Newcastle are doing behind the scenes to bolster all areas. The recruitment area is one that they've obviously been highly focused on since Newcastle were taken over. There's constant new additions in there to make sure obviously they can pick up the best players, both at a young age and for the young teams, and also for the first team as well. Yeah, and just finally, I'm conscious we're approaching 22 minutes now. These videos don't get any shorter, but Bournemouth away, obviously that should be the real talking point ahead of a long trip tomorrow. What are you feeling going into it, and what did Eddie Howe have to say? Because obviously he's a club where he's a legend, really. Yeah, it is. It's obviously a nice return for him, but I think the love will be parked to one side at the Vitality Stadium at the weekend. Newcastle need 3 points, and they always need 3 points, of course, but with the international break coming up, you do want to sign off with a victory. And yeah, Bournemouth this season are a bit hit and miss. I do think Newcastle have got enough to get a result down there. Well, fingers crossed anyway. It's a long journey for us too. Having, as you mentioned there, only just arrived back in the UK from Germany. But yeah, it's we'll see how it goes. We'll be there. Me and you will both be there. Hopefully Liam will be there. He's thrown a bit of a strop after the Dortmund defeat, and then having to drive me and Jordan back in the early hours of Thursday morning it was. So he needs his rest. So maybe he'll come to Bournemouth with me and Jordan. Hasn't made a decision on that yet, but we'll find out tomorrow. But me and Jordan will be back definitely, and we'll be talking about the game against Bournemouth. Hopefully another win for Newcastle. Hopefully they make it 10 games unbeaten domestically, and we're talking about another win on the Geordie Journos. But in the meantime, of course, T's and C's, please like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that, and we'll see you next time on the Geordie Journos. Cheers.